Hi, welcome to the Nurture Nature Show. I am the Reverend Dr. Laura Kim Joyner of One Earth Conservation and Ministry. I serve as wildlife veterinarian and Unitarian Universalist minister. During our time together, we will have a chance to nurture ourselves so that we can nurture all of nature. Welcome into this community of hope and nourishment and solidarity with all of life. Today's theme is nurturing wonder, letting the beauty you are be what you do. I believe that nurturing wonder is so very good for us, and it's also good for life around us. That's why I'm so glad that you're with us today, because I long for the flourishing of all of life. And while I'm talking today, I ask you to consider this question. What is wondrous in your life and life around you? Now, you're probably wondering, well, what is wonder? Now, I could describe it in words, be something like this. It is when we see something that surprises us and we have admiration for it, we have a response to the beauty and the inexplicability of it, and it's wondrous to us. But you know what? I think it would be better if I just showed you. One time I was walking in Guyana, which is a country in South America. And I went to go visit the Cader Falls. It is the largest single drop waterfall in all the world. It is part of the Potara River, which is in the Amazon basin. And as I was walking up to this falls, I was so struck in wonder at its height and the roar and the mist. And just when I thought it couldn't get any better, I heard parrots call. It's like they were conjured out of the mist as they flew towards. They were two red and green macaws, and they flew right by us. They were such a sight to see, and we just stood there. And soon they came back, and they were headed right into the falls. I thought they were going to enter the cascade, but instead they veered off to the right, where they had a nest on the cliffs. I tell you, I think it was one of the most wondrous times in my life to see the colors of the parrots melding with the colors of the rainbow. So yes, maybe that's a once-in-a-lifetime event, but wonder can happen in hundreds of different ways every day for all of us. People report that they experience, on the average, about 3 times a week awe. What is your average per week? Think back on this week. How many times have you experienced awe? Is it 1 time? 5 times? 10 times? No matter what your answer is, I ask, do you wish you could experience wonder more often? People usually do, and there are many ways to cultivate wonder. But to really explain why would I want to bother with that, we need to look at wonder. Where did it come from? What is it good for? Well, nobody really knows for sure, but it comes from a long way back. Jane Goodall, who works with chimpanzees and other chimpanzee biologists, noticed one time this lone male chimpanzee, and the chimpanzee came up to the waterfall, and the hair rose up on the chimpanzee, and the chimpanzee started to dance and to chant and to throw things and to talk, and it was so amazing. And then it just sat down. He just sat down and stared at the waterfall. Now, Jane Goodall and others have witnessed this several times in other chimpanzees, and they feel, well, they speculate that it could be a nascent form of spirituality in our simian cousins. Wonder pulls us towards that which might be good for us. And it works like other emotions. Emotions are generally motivators to get us to move towards that which is good for us, and then to go back from what might harm us. And wonder works in conjunction with all the other emotions. So the classic example is that of a bear. Well, at least it's a classic example for those of us who live in Alaska or have, because everything seems to boil down to a bear story or a bear metaphor. So in Alaska, if you have a great deal of fear and not too much wonder, you're not going to go outside. You're not going to go for a hike and see the beautiful landscapes or the bears or the birds. If you have too much wonder, you'll walk right up to them, and when they charge, you won't run away, and then you're going to be lunch. Or if it's early in the morning, you might be toast. So what wonder does, working with the other emotions, it invites us out into beauty and connecting into that which is good for it, and to do it in ways that can keep us safe. Wonder is indeed so good for us. Wonder invites us out into the world to open up to possibilities, to have our lives open up. They help us live a reality based on beauty. Wonder also helps us deal with the other harsher reality of harm that comes from death and illness and disappointment. Without wonder, we would close in. We would live less vibrant lives, less intimate lives. So wonder asks us to move towards what is good for us, such as what was shown in this one study that they did. They took a bunch of teenagers out rafting, and a week later, the teenagers reported that they were more curious and engaged with the world. Wonder also helps alleviate depression and reduces inflammation in the body. Wonder is good for our prosocial emotions and activities. For instance, we can become more generous, more humble, and more empathetic. And when we're more empathetic, well, it just really helps others to warm up to us and want to be with us, and our relationships are better. And we also get a sense of wanting to connect to the whole, and we become the whole. We lose our ego and we become more mindful and present. And did you know that just writing about awe and wonder makes us more generous, kinder and compassionate, and not just for our own kind, but for other species as well. I lead Nurture Nature workshops where we encourage people to nurture human nature so that they can take care of other species and the planet Earth. And I think this is a really important skill to have in this day and age, because we have climate change, extinction, and the loss of biodiversity. So the two areas that we ask people to nurture, and we work on it together, are wonder and empathy. Now, there are so many ways to experience wonder and empathy and to nurture it. But as Sufi poet Rumi says, let the beauty you are be what you do. There are hundreds of ways to kneel and kiss the ground. But I just want to talk about 4. Okay, so the first one is just getting out in nature, having wow experiences, such as happened one time when I was leading a multi-generational, that was families and kids, and we were in New Mexico at the Bosque del Apache here, and the kids, we were going around bird watching, and the children seemed maybe a little ill at ease, wasn't quite sure what their role was out in nature, especially one by the name of Joey. Joey's mother had an addiction to cocaine, and when Joey was born, he too had an addiction to cocaine. And he always had behavioral issues and resonating with people. So there we all are, the children and the families and Joey, and we come around and we see a pond full of snow geese. Their bright white feathers sparkling in the sun and the clear water and the mountains. And then all of a sudden, the snow geese take off. And the children, well, they go nuts. And they're transformed. And no one more so than Joey. Joey pointed, and he jumped up and down, and he ran, and he shouted, and he went running towards his grandparents to hold them and to be held. He so wanted to share this moment with them. Nature is full of surprises, and that's part of the wonder that happens. And it's good for us. A friend of mine, James Austin, is a neurologist, and he writes about what happens in the brain when we go out in nature and see all these different objects that surprise us. And he says, what goes on in the brain, it's sort of like we integrate all the many different us that are inside of the brain, and we become clearer, more authentic, deeper, more mindful, and present. So he writes, go out in nature. And then he says, also look up. Something really special happens in the brain when we look up. And he even says, look up to the right. That has a special time. And he writes about this, and he used one example of something that happened to me many years ago. I was out in Guatemala in Central America, and I'm a parrot wildlife veterinarian. And so I was walking with my companion, and it was in the early morning before the sun came up, and there weren't really many parrots about. It wasn't really the parrot season. So we started to talk, and he started to explain to me about his love for Mary and Jesus. And I got a little uncomfortable. I withdrew internally. I wasn't sure if he wanted something from me or if he was proselytizing. And as he was talking about his love for Mary and Jesus, we came up to the forest edge. And just then, the sun peeked up over the tops of the trees through the mist. And at that moment, a flock of parrots burst out of the trees. The next thing I knew, I was down on the ground sobbing. So full of awe and wonder, I couldn't even stand up. I was a little embarrassed. It never happened to me before. But more than anything, I was grateful for the sense of clarity I had about my connection to humanity and to life. And I knew that when my friend was saying Jesus and Mary, it was like I was saying birds and trees. And ever since that moment, I have moved towards things more spiritual, towards beauty, towards service, and towards an ease of religious differences, because now I can touch the wonder that is riding behind it all. My friend, the neurologist Jim Austin, tells me, well, that's not so unusual what happened to you. People know that when you look up, it invokes awe. And so a group of people did a study, and they asked half of the group of the people to look up at a stand of trees. And the other group, they told them to turn around and not look at the trees. And then after the study, they came up to each group with the questionnaires and a box full of pencils, and they pretended to trip, and the pencils went sprawling. And then they measured how many pencils the people picked up. The awe group picked up 10% more pencils than the other group did that didn't look at the trees. And the awe group as well were less inclined to wanting to be paid for their time there. So look up. Look up at the trees, at the birds, at the stars, or the planets that we've been able to see 4 of them right before sunrise the last couple of weeks here in October in 2015. Wow. Oh, and here's another trick that goes along with wow experiences. Like other emotions, if you say the word or have the facial expressions of the emotion, you can actually evoke the emotion. So just saying wow evokes wonder. So say it with me now. Wow. Now that wonder that is out there is in here, and it's everywhere. It's in the ordinary. But how do we move towards what might be boring or banal? I mean, who wants to do that? I mean, it's easy enough to see beauty in the orange and the red trees, but what about in the winter? And it looks like this. Or if we're commuting into New York City or anywhere we are and we're enclosed indoors or in the subway or the train, and the only thing we have to wonder at is the newspaper and the last crazy thing that ridiculous politician that said. I mean, really? So in becoming wondrous of the ordinary, we want to move from that really, idea of as we get through the day, and we want to move more towards really? So say that with me too now. Really? Okay, but we have to practice that because things are ordinary. We're not paying attention. So one of the most important things you can do is slow down. And then ask yourself, when you look at something, how did it get to be here? What is its connection to me? If it's alive, what is it thinking or feeling? How is it connected to all of life? How are we in all of this together? So let's practice that right now, shall we? Pick something boring in your environment now. And I'd really appreciate it if you weren't looking at me right now. Okay, so let's say you're in your house and you're looking at the wood in your house, maybe in the bookcases or in the windows. And so you ask yourself these questions. Where did it come from? How is it connected to me? Well, here's one way that you might be able to answer that. Woody trees have not been around the whole time on life on Earth. They only started coming during the Devonian period, which was about 350 million years ago. And what experts speculate is that the trees, the rapid increase of woody trees during this time triggered a massive, actually two massive extinction rates. One even more so than the meteor that killed the dinosaurs during the Cretaceous. It's because they changed the environment and the soil and the oxygen and the carbon. And so there was this massive extinction. And today, they've been so successful that there are 3 trillion trees on the planet. That's 400 for every human. They caused terrible climate change, awful extinction. See, we're not really all that bad, are we? Really? Which brings me to the third way to experience wonder, and that is in our own kind. It's all well and good to experience wonder in geniuses and babies and children, but what if we could see it in the faces around us all the time? Who are they? What are they thinking and feeling? How are they connected to me? How are they connected to all of life? How is it that humans can build bridges and go to space? How is it that humans can be so kind in the midst of so many challenges? In my work as a Unitarian Universalist minister and also a wildlife veterinarian working in conservation, I find this is the toughest spiritual quest, is to actually appreciate and find wonder in our own kind. It takes practice because we are a blaming species. We're bored easily, so we tend to internally think about people in this kind of an energy that's a dude, like a dude energy. And what we want to cultivate is a softer dude energy, more like dude. So say it with me now, would you? Dude. And if you've got somebody in the room with you, look at the beauty of who they are. Turn to them and go, dude. Now, what's in them is also in you. We really need to own how marvelous our presence here is on the earth, our individual presence of what we're thinking and feeling and doing. If we cannot see the beauty of the world that's also in us, we risk shutting down to the rest of life. We can't see it because we can't see it in us. And perhaps this more than anything takes a great deal of practice. So we just go around and say this phrase over and over again. I'm good. I'm good. Now let's put those 4 kinds of wonder together. Being out in nature, wonder at the ordinary, wonder at others, and wonder of ourselves into this phrase. Wow, really? Dude, I'm good. It is in our nature to nurture wonder and all of nature. Ours, yours, theirs, the earth's. Let us do this for our own life's sake, as well as for the sake of all life. I truly believe that you can nurture nature more. So as for a little bit more help with this, at the end of this show are some reflection questions. You can pause and talk to people about it and consider these. And also there are some suggested actions of how you can bring more wonder into your life. And I would love to hear about this. You can look at the resource slide that follows the end of the show as well and find out how to contact me, and also to get more resources at our Nurture Nature program on One Earth conservation. So I do hope that you will be in touch with me. I would really appreciate that. And now it's time to go. So live, friends, the beauty that you are. We each go our own way, not knowing the answers to all things, yet always seeking in wonder to answer at least one thing. Go in peace and love.